So as part of our Lenten preparations, we've been using the Lent Madness organization. And this last week, the folks who organized, it's a sort of bracket tournament where saints are paired off against each other until one saint finally emerges as the winner and gets the golden halo. You can tell they're having fun with it. And on this last Wednesday, the two saints who were paired up against each other were St. Nicholas of Myra and Rudolph of 𝙗𝙗𝙩. And I will confess that I didn't pay any attention to that until my wife pointed out that St. Nicholas of Myra is, of course, the real-life inspiration for Santa Claus. And so Santa Claus was against Rudolph. The folks who put the bracket together are clearly having some fun with us. And last Wednesday, we talked a little bit on our Wednesday evening program about one of the saints. But it's important, I think, to remember these two saints, and they actually provide a wonderful clue for dealing with our gospel lesson today, too. So let me talk for just a moment about the real-life Santa Claus. St. Nicholas of Myra. Myra's in Turkey. St. Nicholas lived many, many years ago. I believe he died in the 400s. And he was an incredibly well-beloved bishop. He was bishop of his local Christian community, came from a wealthy family. He was generous and gave away stuff. He had a special affection for those people whom the society of his day really looked down upon, people who could be mistreated or taken advantage of easily. St. Nicholas had a special affection for them. He's come down to us as being the patron saint of children, which is why he's sort of morphed into contemporary Santa Claus. But also, he's the patron saint of seafarers and the patron saint of pawnbrokers. I'm not quite sure how pawnbrokers made that list, but he is supposed to be the great patron saint of poor people, of the oppressed, of folks who need someone to look out after them. In fact, he's an incredibly popular saint in Russia, and there's an ancient saying that goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in Russia, where the Russian people said, you know, if God himself should ever forsake Russia, at least, thank God, we still have St. Nicholas. He was just a kind and giving man. Now, St. Rudolph of 𝙗𝙗𝙩, a fellow I had never heard of before this last go-round, and I had to look him up. He was an Italian bishop, but he came from an incredibly wealthy family. Really, really, really wealthy. And when he was 17 years old, his father died, leaving him as the man of the family. And he was so stricken with the responsibility that he began to take his Christian faith very seriously. He began to give away a large amount of his wealth. By the time he was 25, he had given almost all of this incredibly large fortune away. Even his own home he had given away to be used as a monastery. He himself became a monk. He entered the monastery. Even back in the days when beds were pretty primitive, he had the most primitive bed of all. He slept on a bare board. He didn't use a pillow. He made sure that whatever food he ate was the food that the poorest of his community could afford. No wine, no rich, sumptuous food, very plain and simple food. Gave it all away. He was so giving that at the age of 25, he was elected bishop. He lived a nice, long life. Well, I say long life. He died at a fairly early age, but he lived a nice life. He was giving, he was caring, he was well beloved. He died of this extreme privatation that he inflicted upon himself. Not an example that I'm commending to any of us. but one that we could all say, well, you know, if you want to give away all your stuff. Both of those men lived lives marked by generosity, by caring, by extending themselves for others. It's, I think, the key to understanding what is most widely known as the parable of the prodigal son, which is our gospel lesson today. You probably knew the broad outlines of the story even before you heard it today. Wealthy farmer has two sons. In those days, the elder son inherits almost all of the fortune, but the younger son goes to his father long before dad's in even bad health or his declining years. The younger son goes up and says, Dad, I don't want to wait anymore. Why don't you divvy up the estate and give me my share right now? Dad, without saying a word, without a word of reproach, without a couldn't you at least wait till I'm dead kind of thing, immediately converts part of his estate to cash, gives it to the son, who takes off and does what sons do when they get a wad of cash in their pocket. He spends it all. Fast living, great food, wine, women, song, dancing. And it's not long, the money is all gone. He has to get a job. He's not really trained for much, so he gets a job as a farmhand, where he takes care of the pigs. That's the lowest job on the farm, where he feeds the pigs. And he realizes one day that the food he's giving the pigs is better than the food he's eating. And he says, this is crazy. So he runs back to his dad's house, and he runs up to his father, begs for forgiveness. And here's why I think the parable is misnamed. Because at this point, something spectacular happens, but not on the part of the son. It's on the part of the father. Instead of calling this parable the parable of the prodigal son, I think we ought to call this the parable of the generous and loving father. Because Dad runs to greet him. Dad gives him a new pair of shoes because his shoes are just worn out. Dad takes the ring off his hand and puts a ring on his finger. Dad covers him and kisses and hugs him and throws a party because he's so excited that he's home. Now I want to stop the parable right there. It goes on for a little bit more. But the real point of the parable is right there. Jesus is suggesting to us that the Lord God is not this terrible, judging, stern, long, white-bearded fellow in the sky waiting to see how you screw up. But rather, God is like this generous and loving Father who is eager for each of us to return, who is so excited when you come to church, we have a party. That's what church services are supposed to be like. I know, it's not much of a party. But it really is, if you stop to think about it. We're gathered with friends. We're going to have a little wine. Okay, very little wine. We're going to have a little bread. Very little bread. But it's a reminder of the great party that God is about to throw. When we get to heaven, we do not have to worry that there is a stern, judgmental God who's got a big book with a list of every single thing you have ever done wrong, and he would like to talk to you about that. Yes, there is justice. Yes, there is an accounting that we will all be called upon to give. But that's not the first thing on the agenda. The first thing on the agenda when we get to heaven is God is going to throw his arms around us. The first thing on the agenda is that God is going to give us a new pair of shoes and a ring on our finger. And he's going to wrap his arms around us and smother us with kisses and be excited and happy that we are home. The first thing on the agenda is the joyous reunion of God and God's people. Because you see, the parable of the generous and loving Father is to remind us that God is generous and loving. To remind us that God can hardly wait to be together again. Nicholas and Rudolph knew that. They knew that if you would like to be like God, if you would like to be a better person, if you would like to be as happy as God, as joyous as God, as wonderful as God, then it's about being kind and generous and charitable toward other people. You remember that movie a few years ago, Pay It Forward? It's become a stock phrase now in our language, that we pay things forward. If someone does something wonderful for you, instead of paying them back, go do something wonderful for somebody else. But wouldn't it just be lovely if instead of waiting for somebody to do something wonderful for you, you just took it upon yourself and just went and did something wonderful just 'cause? Wouldn't it be great if today you said a kind word to somebody? Tell somebody how good looking they are. Because you know those models on the covers of magazines are not real, right? That's not what true beauty looks like. You want to see somebody really good looking? Look around. These are good looking people. These are people who have worked hard and struggled and overcome and learned and cared for and given. It's us. And I'm not trying to say that we're so wonderful people that everybody should look up to us. I'm trying to say that the world is a wonderful place filled with kind and loving and generous people. Go up and remind somebody of that. You see somebody having a rough time? Offer an encouraging word. You see somebody who's just seeming to be down in the dumps? It doesn't cost a thing to just say, buck up and hold on. You know, it makes a world of difference. And in doing that, you not only make their day better, you yourself become a better person. I'll even let you in on one of the great secrets of life. You don't even have to really mean what you say. You can just walk up and tell somebody, you know, you're looking pretty good today. And they're going to be so excited by receiving a compliment that it'll make their day. And it will make your day for having seen what you've done. You can just remind folks how much you care for them. And their hearts will be warmed. And when you see their smile, yours will be too. I pulled up to the stoplight the other day in Austin, and in Austin it seems like just about every stoplight or corner has somebody out there asking for money. And sure enough, there was a fella walked over asking for money. I didn't have any cash at all. And so I said, I don't have any money I can share. And he said, that's okay, I'm just hoping you're having a good day. And I thought, how come? I said, good luck to you. I hope you have a good one too. Thanks. It's a bright, beautiful, it was one of those nice, warm, sunny days we had this last week. He said, it's a bright, beautiful day. How can you not have a good day outside in the sun? Wasn't about money. Wasn't about giving. It was just being there and encouraging each other. If that works for homeless folks at the stoplight, don't you think it'll work for those you love? Don't you think it'll work for those who love you? Don't you think it'll work for complete random strangers? What if everybody we meet, just for today, we decided we'd be a blessing for? What if we did something nice for them? Who knows? Might get something started. What better way could there be to prepare for Easter than starting today to be a little bit better ourselves?